Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Management Diaries. I'm your host, Denile Doyle. This is MHN's Property Management Podcast, where we get into the real side of property management, from what's working in leasing and maintenance to the resident experience to leadership lessons and everything in between. RMK Management Executive Vice President, the exceptional Diana Pittro, joins me today. Diana oversees operations, marketing, and management for more than 8,000 units across 39 properties. She's very committed to taking care of her residents, which is why, Diana, I thought you would be perfect to give us your perspective on leasing and retention strategies when it comes to strengthening those relationships with residents and taking that long-term approach. You have a really deep understanding of property management. You've held leadership roles at Draper and Kramer, the Habitat Company. You've also been active in NA for a number of years. Diana and I will talk about how operators can lead leasing teams when it comes to renewals and retention. And of course, we'll look ahead to 2026 and what should be on operators' list of priorities. Welcome, Diana, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I'm happy you asked me.
Let's start with your introduction to multifamily. I get really interesting stories from my guests about how they fell into multifamily, so I'd love for you to share yours with us.
I graduated with a degree in nursery school education because I love children. Instead, I decided to become a flight attendant. So I was a flight attendant for many years. I would say that laid the groundwork for the unusual and dealing with people on an everyday basis. You never had the same people on your plane. I found it really challenging that the variety was there. When I got married, obviously that particular job did not translate very well. It was frowned upon to be married. So I found a job in the administrative side of condo management. I worked my way up into a regional manager role. I immediately decided condo management is not my forte. I felt like it was way, way, way too volatile. So I made the transition into property management. And I was fortunate enough to have enough experience where I was hired as a regional at that time. And I was extremely lucky to have a boss that was very caring, very mentoring, but oh my gosh, she was very demanding. He taught me that the word can't does not exist. Whatever the problem, there's a way to resolve it, to figure it out. And having him as my first quote unquote boss or supervisor really laid the groundwork of my saying, this is what I want to do long term. I want to do this as a career. So that's how I got started.
That's really interesting. You said I knew that condo management wasn't for me. Sometimes we don't even know what it is that we want to do. When we know what we don't want to do, that's kind of a step, right?
And that's just as important as knowing what you do want to do, because going down the path of doing something you dislike every day, nobody's going to grow in that kind of environment.
Let's talk about the evolution of leasing, right? You've been in the industry for decades. And so, again, going back to knowing that this is something that you want to do and you're passionate about and you enjoy doing it, we have seen just the role of the leasing team change. I'm curious as to where you've seen the most change.
I think the biggest thing is there was a time when most property management was done by mom and pop organizations, and there was nothing wrong with that. But training and education were not necessarily mandated. You would be hiring a leasing agent that would be just someone who wanted to work part-time. Maybe it was a mom that said, hey, I want some weekend work just for a little extra money. The biggest evolution of property management and leasing, I believe, has come from the credibility added to it because of the requirements for education and training. Now, when you look for someone in property management, what's the first word you use? Probably experience, desired. Okay. Leasing positions are the start of your career. I will add, leasing positions are my highest turnover. And I believe that's because the job is incredibly difficult at times. We have a salary and a commission program, which can be very robust and rewarding, but I am sure there's a little stress when you have a bad month. There's a little more stress when all your friends are having the weekend to go play and you're working. We do require licensing. We have a ton of training and mentoring for leasing, and we devote this kind of time and cost into a leasing agent because we want them to move up the ranks. We actually have an 83% employee retention rate in our company. And I am extremely proud of the fact that a lot of these people at my regional level were hired by me as leasing agents. So I feel like we have to be doing something right, but the credibility and respectability of this position has grown 300%. Now people realize the value of someone who has some experience and has the education and the training and how to deal with the public and customer service. And I don't mean education in college, but the more important aspect that I have seen become way more critical to me, at least the way I run my company. I want to see the right attitude. I want you to come to me saying, I don't have all this experience, but boy, am I willing to learn. I looked at your website, I did this, I did that. I really want to give this a chance to be where I want to stay and move up. Attitude is critical. It can't just be a nonchalant job that you take to fill in the gaps. It's a career. There's designations in leasing and management, and it is not something to be taken lightly. It has become way more professional and way more credible. And that has resulted in a higher level of person retaining these positions.
The right person must want to be there, right? Want to really be there and grow within the industry. And so it's really important that you pointed out, like knowing the difference, right? Because the person who you're going to really want to devote that time and cost to and to help them grow and develop must be the person who wants to do that.
It's a significant investment. In the first 90 days to 120 days, we probably invest a few $1,000s in that person. And as I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, a lot of the folks who get into it, as much as we can try to prepare them for the role, it becomes something that they decide they don't want to do, which I can respect. If this is not where you're going to be happy and see a future, I don't want you to stay with me and do what makes you happy. The problem, I think, that with the turnover is there's just a lot of movement going on in a certain level age group or generation. And they come into it maybe having higher expectations than are actually reality. They come in with a little bit of, I want to be the manager, so I'll be the leasing agent for 6 months. Then I disappoint them because that's not the way it works. If you stay with me a couple years, I can more or less look at a future and watch your pattern go all the way up. Now, lifestyle comes, changes happen, people move around, properties get sold. You always have that going on. But when I hire a leasing person, I tell them that overall, my employee retention rate is pretty high, and I always promote from within first. So every year we have a steady work plan that you can look forward to, whether it's leasing to assistant, assistant to manager, whatever that is. We try to give them as transparent a look at leasing before they really accept the job. But once in a while, you will have people that'll say, I tried it, I don't like it. And then I'm totally respectful if they want to give me notice and move on. What I don't like is when they go to lunch, text me I'm quitting, and leave the keys in the desk.
I think that's fair. Doing it the right way is very important. You're transparent about the path, right? The fact that you're not going to just grow overnight because there are steps and you have to build on that education, experience, and licensing. In that way, you're managing their expectations. I think all you can do is really try to manage that by letting them know, right?
All we can do is let them know the people that want to be here are the people I want to move up. Promoting from within as many times as you can is worthwhile. You're using your training dollars that you've invested.
Right, you're getting a return on your investment.
And I will add, the pay's a lot better now than it used to be.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. I should have said that. The industry has a lot more respect for these roles now and how good the people are. People are happy to pay for a well-educated, performing position, and they have a definite edge in today's market.
It can be a rewarding path, right? Both on the financial side and also just in like the availability of a growth and development of your career. If you're looking at your leasing team, are there any patterns that kind of tell you, wait a minute, we're thinking about this more transactionally than that relationship focus?
There's a couple things that just come to mind for me. We have all kinds of reports. We check their closing ratio, we check how much traffic, their follow-up. You can see what's going on from the time the person walked in to the time they lease and got their move-in inspection. One of the things I see is when someone might be having a little bit of a slump 1 month and they might be a little frustrated, and I will see them taking high amounts of traffic, and that certain percentage of traffic is actually leasing. However, a higher percentage are canceling. So when I see a high cancellation rate, first of all, I want to see if they're maybe being just a little bit too aggressive and people are getting buyer's remorse. They're putting in their applications because they somewhat feel intimidated enough, or they feel like they have no other options. And then they go home and think about it and go, I don't think I was 100% sold on that. So, I'm going to cancel. And to take it a step farther, what I generally can see is why they canceled. Now, if the application is in process, I can see all of their factual information, and maybe they were short on income or they had too much debt. But when they cancel before the application is actually approved, that tells me they're having buyer's remorse. And sometimes that's totally normal. But when it's too high and too often, I generally have to sit down and say, are you pushing too hard? Maybe have you become too much of a robot and you're so focused on getting that closing line in there that you're losing the listening aspect. It tells me that there's a conversation to be had. Now, the other thing we use regularly, it's not meant to be a criticism of anybody, but we use it as a tool. We use shopping reports. We regularly secret shop our teams. And again, it is not because we think we're going to find something wrong. It's because we want to see what the pattern is. Number one, if you're a new person and you've been with me 5 or 6 months, I'm going to want to kind of see how you're doing. Where did you pick up the training and stick with it? Or where did we miss the communication boat? And we need to go back and look at it. And we do sit down and go through those with our teams. And if they're missing a little bit of something like customer service, or maybe it's a fair housing question, or maybe it's some role playing, they don't know how to quite close it. Maybe they had a bad day that day. And so they just went through the motions. One I hear all the time is, well, I had multiple people coming in. I had to deal with all of them. Then they take a group tour. And I'm like, that never works out. No one in a group tour is going to tell you they want to close on an apartment and discuss their financial situation. You don't get anybody when you do that. So we try to explain to them how to handle these different circumstances. But I think constantly asking them how they're doing and then using the technology you have, not to beat them up, but just to identify patterns. That's the first one. The second one is a lot of times people will get stressed over their results. So many times I'll walk into a property and I'll say, how you doing? And I say, well, I'm not making my goals this month. Sometimes you just got to sit down and listen to them. Sometimes the managers need to stop them in their tracks, or the regional or myself, and say, well, what's going on? A lot of times there's something personal going on. We have two main things that I know we do more than most companies, especially bigger ones. We always err on the side of our employees, and we always err on the side of our residents. We know people are human. We know life happens. Someone can just have a bad day, or maybe it's a young parent and their kids are sick or they're tired. So you can't exclude the dynamics of what we have in place. But you really need to stop and say, these dynamics are telling me there's a problem. I don't know what the problem is. I got to sit down and talk.
It's very important that you're looking for the patterns, right? And then when you identify it, then you can say, okay, maybe a conversation needs to be had. And that could reveal kind of the root cause of it.
And there's all kinds of patterns in leasing. You have traffic patterns. You have reasons for canceling. Sometimes you'll look at your traffic pattern and say, wow, this team is used to closing 40, 50% of their leases. What's going on this month? Well, maybe everybody came in to look for a 1-bedroom and I don't have any. Or maybe the price is too high. The patterns are good from a standpoint of the leasing team, but they're also good from a leadership side because you see other patterns besides one or two. And if you're not really open to what they're going to tell you, then you can't change it.
Those patterns can be really valuable too, because there may be something there that you have to go back and revisit.
Everybody uses surveys, Denile, and we do too. We use move-in surveys. We use how was your first visit? How did you do on move out? How did you do on move in? Why are you leaving? But sometimes the survey results don't quite get into the people side of it. In other words, if someone says, hey, my unit was a mess, well, obviously you're going to go back and say, oh my gosh, what did we do wrong? But it doesn't tell you why it happened. It just tells you the result. You have to take surveys for their value. They're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of why or how do I fix it, other than saying to the team, you need to do a better job. But it can identify a pattern that helps you go back and improve your product or improve your team standards.
Training sometimes too can sometimes be more focused on like systems and procedures and scripts.
Correct.
But then what about really building that relationship? Like when you talked about maybe someone who's so focused that they may have lost that, like that warmth, right? Or that kind of
Yeah, the
ability
warm
to
and
form.
fuzzy.
Right. They're not thinking about forming that connection so much as they're thinking about getting the application. What have you seen as far as the areas where leasing teams do really well and can really build stronger resident relationships?
The leasing team is the first impression. And I know some of our standards and requirements might be a little old-fashioned, but our teams are in wardrobe, professionally attired. You need to stand up and greet the client. If they made an appointment, use their name, offer your hand, immediately ask them for refreshments, and take them to a private area where you can talk and discuss their needs without being out in front of an angry resident or another employee on the phone or whatever. These are very old school in some ways, but we still find that making the first connection is the most critical one. Listening is the most critical. You can sell your property all day long, but listening to what they want sometimes is hard for people to do. When I go to a property and it's really busy and I have the opportunity to help somebody, I'm all excited because I feel like it's a chance to totally step outside my world and be in theirs. Listening and making that initial rapport is where you see your success, not only for the person, but also in your retention. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking, I leased to them, that's the end of that. No, 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 it's not. Matter of fact, you are the person that should be still in touch with them all during this lease. If we have something going on, like a resident event, you should be telling them about things that are going on. We ask leasing teams and office teams to call every resident every 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months. And you can do that with technology, but I asked them to make a call. I said, it's not like you're always going to get them, but a call is much more desirable than another email blast. Those things are okay, but face-to-face is really what I find more people are interested in. Even in our surveys, they want to know who's in the office. They want to know the name of the person they're talking to. They establish relationships with that person. They bring in their dog. We give them biscuits. They bring in their kids. We give them candy, which they probably don't like, but we do. And so that relationship is not something based upon a one-time thing. These are relationships that are built over the year. And our retention rates, 60, 70%. Now, those sound high. People being on the outside of this particular conversation would say, as I have on occasion, if it's too high, you're not raising rents. Okay. You've got to keep in mind every property has its own balance and its own demographic. So as a leader, I think what we do is we identify that property and then we suit the team to fit that property. We have some leasing teams that are very, very nurturing. Some are people that were teachers in the past or nurses, but someone will say to me, when you hire a leasing agent, are you hiring an energetic, bubbly leasing person? And I say, that's one of the traits, but that's not the only one. I have found that my quietest men are good closers. My more mature men and women are more nurturing, especially when it comes to a demographic that's primarily in their 20s or a student group or a group that is a nationality that is not necessarily within the United States. You have a lot of contract workers that come from overseas. They find these people extremely caring and nurturing, which makes them renew for 2 or 3, 4 years. You have to fit the team with that property.
You said that first impression is one of the two most important areas, right? It's when that person first comes in and it's a journey. And then the listening, I love that you mentioned that because people notice when you're listening to them and they notice when you're not. Imagine the prospect coming in and they feel like the leasing specialist isn't really listening to them. That could erode that first experience, right?
Yeah. Most management professionals. Leasing is a tool that is probably drilled in you all the way up the ladder because a lot of times people just want you to listen. And this goes for happy residents as well as crabby residents. A lot of times they just want to vent and they want you to say, I'm listening. I'm sorry this happened to you.
They just want to be heard a lot of times.
They do all the time.
It doesn't just end once they sign the lease and that's it. Having that mindset of the relationship is still ongoing.
Exactly. Most of your leasing teams, they enjoy that relationship. Pets are a huge part of someone's life at any age. Finding ways to connect with them is probably what your challenge is. And once you find that, that's what you play on all year long.
You ensure your residents they feel valued from day one and on, right?
I think value is a good word. They feel like they're valued and they're important. They're not just giving you a rent check. Most of the time, what I hear from leasing agents is, of course, not everybody responds to this. Okay. And I understand that the world is full of different people. So sometimes that connection is very easy to identify, but sometimes it isn't. That's where just staying constant in your effort at the end of the day is appreciated. We have a lot of people that are busy. They go to work, they come home, they don't want to be bothered. They probably never go into the office, never attend a resident event, and yet they will still obviously renew their lease. Some of those people will say, when we do a survey, I like the management, even though you don't think they know the name of anybody. The effort is what they're identifying.
That's a really great point, Diana. There may not be engaging with the team regularly, but it doesn't mean that they're not seeing the efforts and seeing the consistency. And that's what's going to drive their retention.
Sometimes it's one simple thing. A lot of people who travel obviously have their packages delivered to the management offices. And sometimes we see the package there for longer than a week. So we'll send them a text message and say, hey, are you away? Do we have your permission to put this in your apartment? Or if not, we're going to take it out of the package room and put it in the back. So let us know when you want to get it, because obviously the effort is being made to make sure the package gets to them. And we all have package rooms, but when you get 300 packages delivered a day, there is a mess there. And so you can't always hope that everybody's going to pick it up in 24 hours. But when we discover someone hasn't been there for a while, then that's when we want to say, by the way, if you're away, can we do this? Okay. So you're trying to make sure that you're staying in touch, even though they're not necessarily responding to all your other emails during the year or text messages because they're not as engaged.
Right. Still be reaching out and making contact is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Like, obviously, technology is so much more advanced now. It can help you predict whether someone is more or less likely to renew. Whether you're looking at the number of work orders they've submitted or maybe survey feedback you've gotten from them. How do you train your teams to have those conversations, without pressuring the residents or like you talked about when the prospect has that first interaction, you don't want to try to sell too hard because then maybe they have buyer's remorse, right? They go
Yeah.
home and they're like, oh, I don't think I really liked that. So they cancel. So how do you extend that when it comes to renewal time?
If you're doing a lot of the communicating that you are during the year, I would say you probably get a good feeling for what that person is going to do. If they are a contract worker, their contract's going to expire and you're going to keep in touch with them. If they're a young family and they came in and said, look, I'm only going to rent for a year because I don't know where I want to buy, you're going to be aware of that. The key factors you look at in technology are exactly what you said. Is there a problem that we've had over the year? Are they having struggling payments? How many times have they been late? How many times did we have to 5-day them? Are there a lot of work orders related to heat and air that they still feel or repeat issues that we couldn't figure out? There are things you can look at, but I think overall, I just go back to one-on-one communicating. We start our renewals about 120 days ahead of time with a very general letter that says, we're happy you were here. We hope you're going to stay. I'm going to call you soon just to call and see what your plans might be or any concerns you might have. And we make a call. Ideally, the scenario would come where the person would say, I have some issues. Can we chat? And we try to make an appointment and bring them in. If they say, look, I don't really have any issues, I just need to give myself some time to think about what I want to do. Or the last one is, I got to compare rents with everybody else to see what they're doing. Then the second call is, sure, where were you thinking? Are you thinking of moving away because you're too far from work? If you are, let me refer you to another area that has some very quality, apartment residences in. Sometimes it's our property, sometimes it's a property we respect a great deal. I don't think you can take away anything if you're making phone calls. I think all the technology in the world is great. But again, you're talking to a human, and one day he may say, look, I'm not going to renew. And then the next day he breaks up with his girlfriend and renews, or their job doesn't change and they don't get transferred, or they couldn't find that apartment for less money plus the cost of moving and they stay. And other times they're just happy and they say, oh no, I'm not going anywhere. So I think the communication has to be there. You can send a letter, but you got to follow up.
The following up is key. Just sending a letter, that's not really making that direct contact.
I put myself in their shoes. How many times, if I want to call my doctor, do I have to leave a message and tell my date of birth and talk to 5 different people before I even get a ability to leave a message? Is that not frustrating?
Yes, it is.
I get frustrated as heck. How many times do you call a restaurant or literally you get 3 or 4 messages, and at the end, you're still leaving a message? Or my particular pet peeve is, how many chat bots do you have to talk to before you can get an office to call you back? I just recently shopped some properties and I had 5 chat box responses. How can I help you? I need this. How can I help you? I need this. Well, I don't have this. How can I help you? Finally, I said, could you just give me the office? I guess what I mean is technology is wonderful. It should help us improve our position, our credibility. And it's not meant to take the place of a human when it comes to providing compassion or a listening ear or some sympathy. So using it at a balance to me is the ideal scenario, not overusing it, not underusing it. But in between there, you've got to have your teams ready to not be afraid to pick up the phone. Like when I used to start 369 calls, they go, "Oh, they're just going to give me a bunch of complaints." No, they don't. They generally say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you touched bases with me. I don't have any problems. Maybe I have a work order, but I was going to call it in next week." I think they fear that because a lot of our business is complaints. But on the other side of it, it's better to know that before you get into a real confrontational system.
First, I agree with being overwhelmed by automations and saying your date of birth multiple times and still not getting the office or whomever you're trying to speak with.
We all use technology, and I think it's great when you're looking at improving the value of your company or your management, and we follow that culture. We do not want to do away with people on site, and we've made that choice multiple times over the years.
Right, that genuine
You
human
know,
contact. I can only get that from another human. Diana, what do you think operators should prioritize, especially going into 2026, or what areas you're highlighting for your leasing teams?
there's a couple things that we highlighted. One is we have encouraged our teams to be much more engaging with their residents on events. We have encouraged them to reach outside the community and become involved in events like chamber events. As far as resident events, I have seen a real uptick in the creativity of our teams. And I have also seen a huge uptick in the participation. Just a couple things that are real highlighters are one property has dinner with 12 friends every month, and each person brings a friend who could either be another resident or someone from the outside. They have ornament decorating contests. One property has the residents engaged in making a gingerbread house from scratch to enter in a contest. I have seen so much creativity come out of my teams that I am so proud of that because we get 150 to 200 people participating on a regular basis. That is huge. Even before the pandemic, we'd have maybe 50. Okay. We are encouraging our teams to reach outside the community. If a resident is heavily engaged with a charity, then we will make that our site charity for the year. We're willing to spend more money on this. The second thing is we're encouraging our leasing teams by giving them retention bonuses. We offer delinquency bonuses and retention bonuses. The delinquency is so that we can make sure that our residents communicate with us when they have a problem. And we can enroll them in a payment plan or some sort of program that allows them 2 payments a month or 3 versus 1. We're again trying to make residents understand that we value them. We're not just going to send them a 5-day and send them to the lawyer. We want to know what's going on in their personal situation, and we can work around it if they tell us. So the retention bonuses are really geared toward people not necessarily taking the assumption I get paid more for a new lease than I get paid for making sure the resident is happy. So that retention bonus is there to balance that attitude. We also have occupancy bonuses. So that engages the whole team, including the maintenance team, in making sure that when they do that work order, they leave a note that says, I did it in 24 hours if you need anything. Or if there's a problem, they pick up the phone and call the resident and make an appointment to go look at it. All these things are part of our goals for improving on next year.
You said you have now 150 to 200 people participating in your resident events, which is a lot.
Sometimes we have to hold them off site because we don't have a room big enough.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the good news. When you do too many, obviously your participation diminishes because not every event is going to suit every person. But you have some events that will draw people out. We have pet events, we have children events, we have safety events, we have wellness events, other events that will be smaller. But I have a lot of communities where, oh my gosh, they show up every month. So we're happy about that. It equates
Yeah.
to the numbers.
And then the bonuses. I really like how the idea behind that is not just only the new leases have the most value, right? With the delinquency bonuses, with the occupancy bonuses, it's driving that home, the value of residents staying and renewing.
Retention involves more than just the office. It involves the whole team. Our maintenance men do a great job of just helping people without even asking for any kind of acknowledgement. The occupancy bonus is part of a reward for the entire team, not just the office team, because they're the unsung heroes in my world.
It's a team effort, right? The leasing teams aren't the ones who are answering the work orders. So it really is that whole kind of dynamic. You include that for them so they can see that you also are valuing everything that they're doing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Before we wrap up, can you share a recent act of kindness? It can be personal or professional, but just something that stood out to you and that was meaningful for you.
There's so many ways of experiencing this in our industry. Not everybody's crabby at you 90% of the time. Um, a lot of times we will get a tray of cookies from a resident, or someone will come in and say, I can't renew here, but I sent two of my friends over. Those to me are acts of kindness, not just compliments. The one that stands out the most was related to my employees. I often get the comment that they're sorry to leave RMK because we've made them feel like they're at home and maybe a situation has come across and they have to leave. But one note came through where this one young lady that we had been mentoring, she had been at a particularly tough property, one that we had to give up for financial reasons. She left me a kind note on my desk that was basically a thank you note. And she told me how important our training and how important my relationship with the teams was to her. And she came back 6 months later. So I will say one of the things that I look at as being a gesture of kindness to me is when my team players leave and they come back. And I have a high number of people that do that. It must be that we're doing something right. It's just the way the culture of the company is.
Absolutely. That really just goes back to you and reflects on you as a leader, not only for an employee to feel moved to extend that gratitude to you, but then to come back, like that says something that says that you're doing something right. So thank you for that story. Diana, I want to thank you for just all of your insights that you shared and helping the audience to understand that resident retention is a company-wide effort and it's a journey and it just starts at the leasing office. And then also how to spot patterns and so that you can see where maybe you need to fill the gaps. I think it's going to really help the audience set their communities up for success and thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
You're welcome. I had a good time. I'm glad you asked me.
I had a great time, Diana, and I hope you'll come back. That's all for this episode of Management Diaries. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll join us again. Remember to subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so you don't miss an episode. Have you heard about our MHN Executive Council? Each month, leading multifamily experts weigh in on relevant and trending topics, and we'd love to include your insights. To join, please visit multihousingnews.com or email jessica.fear@cpe-mhn.com.